decided to give up movies for Lent since the movie theater burned down.
After decades of silence and living discreetly, Angie Dickinson, at age 93, has finally broken the veil of mystery about James Arness, the 2-meter-tall actor, the hero in Gun the Man Down, who once made her heart flutter during the filming days. I tried to flirt with him between the dusty scenes, but Arness just smiled politely and turned away, Dickinson recounted. Now she reveals a detail that sends chills down the listener's spine. He had very close male colleagues, too close to just be friends. They often met and kissed each other. And I will tell all Dickinson's accounts have opened a shadowy corner of 1950s Hollywood, where same-sex love, loyalty, and personal secrets were hidden in the darkness. After the glamour and the glorious scenes were there, connections never revealed, emotions and desires that the audience never knew. And Arness himself, with his cold but seductive appearance, did he really live a double life that only those close to him could see? The answer will be revealed in the video. After many years of silence and avoiding the media, people thought Angie Dickinson had completely closed the past. The dazzling lights, the love stories spanning the Hollywood sky, and the pains she had never confessed. But recently, in a rare interview, the 93-year-old star unexpectedly agreed to share all the secrets about Hollywood, a belated release for her own heart. She said that some memories, no matter how deeply buried, will return when we are calm enough to look back. And the name that Angie could no longer avoid was James Arness, the man who once made her both admire and hurt the most in life. That afternoon, Angie sat quietly in her silent Beverly Hills villa, which had witnessed many golden seasons of the past. The sunlight slanted through the window frame, shining on her 93-year-old face, but still retaining the elegant features of an unfading Hollywood icon. In front of her was an old photo album, leather cover, worn edges peeling with time. Inside were black and white photos from 1956, the time the film Gun the Man Down was released, marking her first leading role on the silver screen. In the middle page, James Arness appeared, tall, calm, deep eyes, looking straight into the lens next to young Angie with a bright smile but eyes containing an unnamed desire. She turned the pages slowly, thin fingers trembling as they stopped at a behind-the-scenes photo. James was smiling. That smile was warm, but not for her. A moment of silence, Angie sighed softly. A gentle breeze passed through the window, bringing back memories, like a fierce desert dust storm, uncontrollable, pulling along everything she had tried to forget, and an unconfessed feeling. In 1956, on the set in Arizona, Angie entered the world of Gun the Man Down with a pounding heart. She was 25 years old, just leaving small guest roles in Death Valley days, and Gunsmoke, now given the role of Janice, the flirtatious saloon girl betraying her lover for money and power. At that time, James Arness, 33 years old, was already noticed by John Wayne playing Rem Anderson, the gunman abandoned by friends in the desert with a bullet in his leg. Every time he stepped into the frame, the entire crew held their breath. Terrifying height, voice deep like thunder, but eyes strangely gentle, as if hiding a secret no one dared to ask. Angie, with the instinct of a young girl craving to conquer Hollywood, was drawn in from the first glance. She told herself, what kind of man is both cold and seductive like that? Between the dusty scenes, Angie did not hesitate to flirt with James. She clearly remembered a July noon when the sun was scorching the set. She brought him a glass of cold water, deliberately letting her hand lightly touch his. "Jim, do you know you make the whole crew swoon?" she said, radiant smile, sparkling eyes. James just smiled, politely nodded, then turned away, his eyes passing over her like looking at a passing breeze. Not a word in response. Angie was disappointed but thought he was just shy. But it wasn't until later that Angie realized behind that smile was an impenetrable wall. They kept in touch after Gun the Man Down, not often, but enough to become friends. James liked fishing at Lake Tahoe, liked sitting silently by the campfire, hated being photographed or appearing in tabloids. Once in a night in 1958, he called Angie at 2 a.m., deep voice over the phone. "Angie, do you ever feel lonely in a crowd?" She answered immediately, "Every day, Jim. Every day." They understood each other in a way with few words, like two people walking on the dusty road of Hollywood, but carrying their own wounds. The late-night phone calls from James made Angie start dreaming of a deeper relationship. But every time she suggested meeting outside work, James evaded with vague words. "The shooting schedule is busy, Angie." But the truth later knocked Angie down because Arness did not really like women. He had deep feelings for other men. Angie discovered this painful truth on an evening in 1959 at a post-Rio Bravo party in Hollywood. She was standing at the bar, martini in hand, when she saw James in the corner of the room next to a young man, a supporting actor in Gunsmoke named Tommy. They stood close, closer than normal. Tommy put his hand on James's shoulder, whispered something, and James smiled. A real smile, not the polite smile he gave Angie. Then, in a moment that stunned Angie, Tommy pulled James into a hidden corner behind the curtain, and they kissed long enough that it couldn't be friendship. Angie stood there, glass trembling in her hand, feeling like someone had just slapped her in the face. She turned away, pretending to talk to a director, but her heart was shattered. Many years later, the pieces gradually came together. Angie heard whispers behind the scenes James often met legendary actor John Wayne and a few other men at private beach houses in Malibu. Once a mutual friend told Angie that she saw James and Tommy leaving a bar in West Hollywood at midnight, hand in hand, their eyes looking at each other full of passion. James never had a public relationship with a woman. In 1968, at a charity party, Angie couldn't hold back, asked directly, "Jim, why don't you ever date anyone?" He looked at her eyes, sad like a deep lake, then said, "Angie, there are things that cannot be said." She didn't press, but she knew. And she hurt because a talented man like James had to live in the dark in fear of being judged by the whole world. There was another secret more heartbreaking than anything that Angie revealed about James. That heartbreaking secret was that James had to marry a wife to avoid the scrutinizing eyes of the world. He had a daughter, Jenny, born in 1950, from a short marriage to Virginia Chapman. Angie met Jenny a few times, a sensitive girl, big round eyes, but always scared. James loved his child, but didn't know how to show it. However, in 1962, Angie visited James's house in Pacific Palisades and witnessed a scene that made her shudder. Jenny, then 12 years old, dropped a glass in the kitchen. James, reading the newspaper, stood up abruptly, shouted loudly, "Stupid! You never do anything right!" Jenny sobbed, ran to her room while James turned away. Face red, fists clenched. Angie pulled him to the balcony. "Jim, she's just a child. Why are you so harsh?" He was silent, then whispered, "I don't know how to be a father. Angie, I'm scared. Scared of what he didn't say, but Angie guessed. Scared that Jenny would see through his true self." Jenny grew up in that harshness. She once told Angie over the phone, voice trembling, "Dad never hugs me. Dad only knows how to order. Once I got an A in literature, I brought it home to show Dad, just nodded and said, 'Good, but next time better.'" Angie tried to advise James, sent letters, called, even met him on the Gunsmoke set. But he always pushed her away. "You don't understand, Angie. Don't interfere." By 1975, Jenny, then 25 years old, completely cut off contact with her father. James never talked about it, but Angie saw him drink more, eyes always red as if running from himself. In 2011, when James passed away due to old age, Angie sat alone in the living room holding the old photo from Gun the Man Down. She cried not because of unrequited love, but because of a man who lived his whole life in a cage he built himself. She called Jenny, hoping to share the pain, but no one answered. Perhaps Jenny was also crying in her own way in a small corner of the vast world. Now, at age 93, Angie is no longer angry with anyone. She only feels pity. Pity for James for having to hide his true self, living in fear of Hollywood turning its back. Pity for Jenny for never being hugged by her dad, never knowing how much he loved her. And pity for herself, the young girl who once thought love could change everything, who stood by the trembling martini when seeing the man she secretly loved kiss someone else. She put the photo album down, smiled faintly. Outside the window, roses were still blooming red like blood, like secrets that never fade. "If there is a next life," Angie whispered, "I hope James will live true to himself. And Jenny, I hope she will forgive." Going back in time 7 decades, when Angie Dickinson stepped into Hollywood, she was like a hot wind from the North Dakota desert, carrying sharp beauty, speaking eyes, and a half smile enough to make anyone turn around. The press called her the new sex symbol because Angie knew how to use beauty as a weapon. The first notable role, Janice in Gun the Man Down, shaped the image, the flirtatious saloon girl ready to betray her lover for money and power. The audience was mesmerized, directors were mesmerized, and men on the set were also mesmerized. Just 3 years later, Rio Bravo 1959 turned Angie into a star. The role of Feathers, the seductive nightclub girl wearing a tight red dress flirting with cowboy John Wayne with eyes and words full of innuendo, was the pinnacle of the strategic flirt style. She was not just beautiful, she was smart. Every time Feathers walked into the bar, the whole world seemed to stop. Dean Martin, co-star in the film, once whispered to the press, "Angie can melt ice with just a glance." And indeed, she was an expert at seducing men, not the innocent kind, but the kind who knew exactly what she wanted and how to get it. On the set of Ocean's 11, 1960, Angie continued the role of Beauty in The Heist Gang. She played Beatrice Ocean, ex-wife of Danny, and the scene where she walked into the Las Vegas casino in a black silk dress, hair, and a high bun was enough to silence the entire Rat Pack. Sinatra, famously romantic, did not hide his admiration. Tabloids rumored that between takes, Angie and Frank often disappeared together in the trailer, though she always denied it. Angie's mysterious smile when asked about Sinatra said it all. "We're just friends. Very close." But not everyone loved Angie. Her confidence and seductive ability sometimes made female co-stars uncomfortable. In The Chase, 1966, co-starring Marlon Brando and Jane Fonda, Angie was rumored to have argued fiercely with Fonda on set. The reason was because Fonda, then pursuing the new feminist image, thought Angie's character, a woman using beauty to manipulate men, was outdated and reactionary. Angie responded sharply, "You want to be a hero? Go ahead, I just play real. Women also have the right to use beauty to survive." The argument spread behind the scenes to the point that director Arthur Penn had to intervene. Similarly, in Point Blank with Lee Marvin, Angie caused waves again. She played Lynn, the ex-lover of the main character, a seductive but scheming woman. There was a scene where she had to cry and beg Marvin for forgiveness, but Angie refused to act according to the script. "I don't cry for men," she told director John Borman. "Lynn has to be strong until the end." The argument lasted 3 days, to the point that Marvin had to mediate Angie, "Do whatever you want, I trust you." The result, the scene became one of the most powerful moments in the film. In 1974, Big Bad Mama pushed Angie's flirtatious image to the peak. She played Wilma McClatchy, a widow leading her two daughters to rob banks shooting guns while seducing men. The nude scene in the bathtub with two lovers shocked the audience. The press screamed, and feminists protested in front of theaters. Angie was unfazed. At the press conference, she declared, "I'm 43 years old, still beautiful, still sexy, and I'm proud of it. Women don't need permission to be sensual." But that very confidence caused her to clash with some male co-stars. A supporting actor once complained Angie always wants her scenes to stand out more. She replied, "I don't apologize for wanting to shine. This is my show." Nevertheless, Angie didn't always win. In Dressed to Kill, she argued with Nancy Allen, director Brian De Palma's wife, over a cigarette. "She smoked in a closed room. I'm allergic," Angie recounted later. "I told her to stop. She got mad." De Palma didn't want to hear two cats fighting. That small war made the set atmosphere tense like a string, but Angie didn't yield. "I don't tolerate cigarette smoke for anyone," she said. Therefore, when James Arness deftly rejected her feelings, Angie Dickinson clearly felt the disappointment like a cold slap in the middle of her fluttering heart. However, instead of letting that hurt turn into resentment, she chose to keep full respect and quietly stay by his side, not as a lover, but as a rare confidant. Many years later, Angie still silently supported James, listened, and quietly followed the most painful secrets, the hidden corners that even Hollywood had never known. To truly understand Angie Dickinson, we need to turn back time, returning to her childhood and the turbulent journey that forged her resilience, beauty, and strong soul, the woman who later became one of the immortal legends of Hollywood. Angie Dickinson, real name Angeline Brown, was born on September 30th, 1931 in Culm, North Dakota, a small, cold, and remote town in northern America. She was the second of three sisters in a family of German origin. Her father, Leo Henry Brown, was a newspaper worker and editor of the Culm Messenger, while her mother, Frederica, was a strict and devout housewife. Angie grew up to the sound of her father's printing press, the smell of newspaper ink, and dreams of the vast world beyond that quiet plain. When the only movie theater in town burned down, little Angie cried for a whole week. That was the place that nurtured her young imagination. Perhaps from that moment, another flame was ignited in her heart, the desire to step into the world of cinema. When Angie was 10 years old, the family moved to Burbank, California, the land of film studios where every road seemed to lead to Hollywood. She attended Bellarmine Jefferson High School and graduated early at 15 years old. Afterward, she continued studying at Glendale Community College and then Immaculate Heart College, earning a business degree. Before becoming an actress, Angie worked as a secretary for an aircraft parts company, a dry job, but one that nurtured in her meticulousness, caution, and realism. No one expected that secretary would soon become one of the most sensual and powerful icons of Hollywood in the 1960s, 1970s. Angie's path to the arts began quite by chance. In 1953, she entered a local beauty contest and won second place. The prize wasn't big, but it opened a small opportunity for her appearing on The Jimmy Durante Show as an illustration model. It was there that directors noticed her and invited her to audition for television. In 1954, Angie appeared for the first time on the small screen in the series Death Valley Days, marking the start of a persistent journey of more than half a century in the world of acting. Throughout the 1950s, she patiently took guest roles in television series like Gunsmoke the Virginian and Matinee Theater, learning how to stand in front of the camera how to deliver lines, and how to survive in the competitive world of Hollywood. The real turning point came for Angie in 1959, when legendary director Howard Hawks chose her for the role of Feathers in the film Rio Bravo, alongside John Wayne and Dean Martin. This seductive, intelligent, and confident role made audiences worldwide remember her. Angie won the Golden Globe for Best New Actress, a title affirming she was not just a beautiful face, but a true talent. After Rio Bravo, she participated in a series of major films like Ocean's 11 1960 with Frank Sinatra, The Killers 1964, and Point Blank 1967. In each role, she brought a unique style, a combination of femininity and strength, seduction, and intelligence, what set Angie apart in the male-dominated world of cinema at that time. In the 1970s, when many other actresses were forgotten, Angie found new light. In 1974, she played police officer Pepper Anderson in the series Police Woman. The series caused a huge sensation, making Angie a role model for strong women on American television. She was not just a sensual icon, but also an icon of independence, of feminism, in an era when women were rarely given action roles. She once said, "I want women watching the film to think they can do it too." Policewoman placed Angie in history as one of the first actresses to take the lead in a famous crime series. In the following years, she still acted in Dressed to Kill 1980 or Pay It Forward 2000. But the influence was no longer the same. She once admitted the role of Pepper Anderson was a double-edged sword. It made me famous, but it also made Hollywood only see me in one mold. Nevertheless, audiences still remember Angie as someone who dared to break limits, dared to go ahead of her time. She didn't need noise, just needed each of her roles to have a soul. Angie's private life was also tinged with romance and melancholy. Despite being famous and seductive, Angie was not a lucky woman in love. Each of her relationships left a deep mark, both beautiful and sad, somewhat reflecting the complexity of Hollywood in the second half of the 20th century. Angie's first marriage took place early on June 2nd of 1952, when she was only 20 years old. Her husband was Angie Dickinson, a football player and young electrical engineer. At that time, Angie had not yet stepped into cinema, and according to her own words, later that marriage came from the desire to escape the stuffy little house more than burning love. She once frankly said Jean was a good person, but we were completely wrong to be together. The marriage lasted only 8 years with no children and ended peacefully in 1960. Despite parting, they still maintained a friendly relationship, proof that Angie, though hurt, always tried to leave with kindness. After the divorce, Angie entered the most brilliant period of her career and also began a series of stormy relationships with the most powerful men in Hollywood. The most prominent was the relationship between her and Frank Sinatra, the American music legend. They met in the 1960s when Angie was filming Ocean's 11, the film Sinatra starred in. The two quickly became deeply attached. Angie once called him the most important man in my life. Sinatra wanted to marry, but when it came close to the day, he said, "I will not marry an actress." And Angie, though in pain, felt relieved. She knew a marriage between two stars like them would never be peaceful. After that relationship, Angie married for the second time to Burt Bacharach, the genius musician, author of countless immortal songs like Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head or Close to You. They married in 1965, and in the public eye, this was the golden couple of Hollywood, a seductive actress and a talented musician. A year later, they had their first daughter, Leah Nikki Bacharach. Born in 1966, Nikki was born 3 months premature, weighing just over 700 grams. The premature birth caused the baby to struggle with a series of health issues, weak vision, underdeveloped nervous system, and communication difficulties. These early life signs shaped the painful life that followed, not only for Nikki but for her parents as well. From a young age, Nikki showed differences. She was intelligent, sensitive, but often withdrawn and easily agitated. Many years later, doctors diagnosed her with Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism spectrum disorder. But in the 1970s, Asperger's was almost unrecognized in America, so both Bert and Angie were confused. Angie recounted the child was too smart to be in a special school, but too fragile to live in the normal world. Mother and daughter were attached almost inseparably, while Bert, who, with his illustrious music career, was often away, only appearing on rare occasions. It was that very difference that created the first crack in the marriage between Bert Bacharach and Angie Dickinson. When Nikki was in her teens, doctors advised sending her to a specialized psychological support center for treatment and social skills training. Angie strongly opposed. She believed her daughter needed love, not to be isolated. But Bert, with his rational thinking, believed that was the only way to help Nikki integrate. In the end, Bert won. Nikki was sent to a care facility in Minnesota where she stayed for 10 years. For Angie, that was a decision that pained her for life. She once said he thought it helped Nikki, but it destroyed the child. As for Nikki, that period left a deep psychological wound. She felt she was imprisoned by her father, deprived of freedom and her mother's close love. In an interview many years later, Bert Bacharach admitted, "The child always resented me for that. I thought I was doing the right thing, but actually I made her suffer." The letters Nikki wrote while at the center were full of despair, longing to come home, yet feeling she no longer belonged. Angie, then still filming policewoman, reduced her work to a minimum to visit her daughter often. But the distance between mother and child gradually became unbridgeable. When Nikki grew up, she left the center and tried to live independently, but independent life became too heavy. She couldn't hold a steady job, couldn't maintain relationships, and was always tormented by depression. Bert admitted Nikki said many times she would commit suicide. "I thought it was just words in moments of weakness." But then one day, the child really did it. On January 4th, 2007, Nikki ended her life at her home in California using helium and a plastic bag to suffocate. The family announced that she passed away peacefully to escape the brain damage caused by Asperger's. Nikki was 40 years old. Nikki's death completely devastated Angie Dickinson. In a later interview, she choked up, "No one should outlive their child." She no longer accepted film roles, withdrew from Hollywood, and lived reclusively in Beverly Hills. Angie said she still heard her daughter's voice every night, like a part of the soul not yet at peace. As for Bert Bacharach, it took him many years to dare mention the story again. In his memoir, published in 2013, he admitted, "It was my fault. I thought I was doing the best for the child, but I didn't listen to her." After Nikki's death, the two, though long divorced, shared a common pain. They no longer blamed each other, but the void Nikki left was irreparable. Angie once said, "I loved many people, but there was only one I gave birth to, and I lost her." And Bert, in his final years, often played the song Nikki again, the piece he wrote especially for his daughter when she was born, like a belated apology. Not only was there the issue of Nikki in the middle, but the marriage between Angie and Bacharach was not smooth. She once admitted, "He never really loved me, at least not in the way I understand love. He loved in his own way, but it was a selfish way." When Angie began resounding success with policewoman, Bert became distant. He didn't like his wife becoming more famous, couldn't share the pressure of filming all night. Many sources also said Burt had extramarital relationships in the final phase. Tensions built up, and in 1981 they divorced. Angie said, "We should have stopped when we were just lovers." After that marriage, Angie never remarried. She had fleeting relationships with Glenford Larry King, and there were rumors of closeness with President John F. Kennedy, which she always denied. Though surrounded by glamour and rumors, Angie remained silent, choosing for herself the pride of an experienced woman, not denying the past, but not exposing it to seek pity. At age 94, Angie Dickinson now lives a quiet and peaceful life in Beverly Hills, in the house she has been attached to for decades. That place was once bustling with parties, friends, and directors coming and going. Now only a small garden she tends herself remains, a few memorial photos along with old posters of Policewoman and Rio Bravo hanging on the wall. "I'm not lonely," she once said in an interview, "I just choose quiet." Though she withdrew from the screen at the end of the 2000s, Angie still possesses a considerable fortune, estimated at around 20 to 25 million USD. Most comes from television royalties, old advertising contracts, and especially real estate in California that she bought at the peak of her career. Her Beverly Hills villa is valued at over 5 million USD, but Angie has never intended to sell. It's not just a home, but her wall of memories, where the laughter of daughter Nikki and the music of ex-husband Burt Bacharach once echoed. Angie's career brought her both fame and long-term financial stability. With the role of policewoman Pepper Anderson in Policewoman 1974-1978, she became one of the first women to receive pay equal to male actors of the same level. Additionally, Policewoman being rerun dozens of times on American television helped her continue receiving royalties for many years after retiring. "I don't need to work anymore, and I don't want to," she once said. "I have enough to live comfortably." After the tragedy of her daughter's suicide in 2007, Angie almost cut off all contact with Hollywood. Only recently when she wanted to speak about Arness. Close friends like Nancy Sinatra or Shirley MacLaine say Angie is still sharp, still knows how to joke, but sometimes her eyes are heavy. That loss made her live reclusively, but not in despair. She spends time reading, rewriting diaries about her filming years and gardening. A hobby she says helps her keep a bit of life in her hands. Regarding health, Angie is still relatively stable for her age. She revealed that she no longer drives, but still cooks for herself, does light exercise, and maintains a mostly vegetarian diet. "I sleep 8 hours, drink plenty of water, and avoid worry," she said. Some acquaintances say Angie still has elegant demeanor, warm, deep voice, and bright eyes, though sometimes she needs a cane to move. In a rare interview, Angie Dickinson once revealed the truth about her relationship with James Arness, the legendary actor of Gunsmoke. She said that between them was not just a simple colleague friendship, but a deep bond based on respect and understanding. "James was the kindest, most sincere man I ever met," Angie shared. Though there were rumors of romance neither ever admitted, they kept the relationship pure but close together, overcoming the lonely years behind the scenes of Hollywood. "We don't need any title," she said, "just know that whenever I need, he's always there." So, what do you think was the relationship between Angie Dickinson and James Arness? A soulmate friendship or a silent love story never fully told? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for following to the end of the video. If you love true stories about Hollywood legends like Angie Dickinson, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest videos. Every subscription from you is a great motivation to help us continue telling brilliant and emotional journeys like this.